Hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to help you understand context in the war in Ukraine. Now, I'll read TASS and Pravda and RT, and I'll watch Russian media with English translation in order to understand why are the Russians saying what they're saying? Like, why are they saying it to this audience, and what do they hope to achieve with it? Well, this video was absolutely fascinating. It came out 3 days ago. Now, at one point, they actually said, you can't make peace with a wolf, indicating that Ukraine was the wolf and it needed to be skinned, and so did all the West, and so did all the Americans. They said this on national TV. Can you imagine how the Russians would flip out if Americans were saying that on, say, 2020 or 60 Minutes? They would have a heart attack. Now, I want you to look for projection. What the Russians tend to do in their propaganda is they tend to project whatever they're doing on their opponent. So we're going to talk about this now. I'll talk about it when we get to that part in the video. When someone unconsciously attributes their thoughts, feelings, or behavior to another person, but they're doing it consciously. So for example, a wife is attracted to a male coworker but can't admit her feelings. So when her husband talks about a female coworker, she becomes jealous and accuses him of being attracted to the other woman. Or a man who feels insecure about his masculinity mocks other men for acting like women. Well, that's the kind of thing that's going to be happening here. And so we're going to watch that. Keep that in mind as you're watching what you're watching, and you'll be amazed at what you see. This is one of those bizarre things that you go, why are they doing that? Well, okay. So the headline here was that the commentator argues against negotiations with Ukraine, but it's far more than that. Just watch what's being said and you'll see it. Now, okay, let's watch this. Special thanks to the Russian Media Monitor, as always, for the awesome work that they do. Okay, here we go. As for Zelensky, it's like something snapped in him, or maybe they whispered something to him at the summit in Switzerland. Maybe someone finally explained something to him, or he understood it himself. There is no one to count on anymore. Americans and the French are having problems. It's not yet clear what is happening in Britain. Okay, so at the time of this was 3 days ago, and so the British just had their elections, and there's a change of government, but there's no real problem with the change of government because this government, the Labour government, is going to be just as behind Ukraine as the previous conservative government was. All of his allies are busy with their own problems. For the first time, he said that despite Ukrainian constitution, even though no one cared about the Ukrainian constitution for ages, and despite countless Ukrainian laws that prohibit negotiations with Russia, he is ready to negotiate with Russia. Well, no, he's been saying, if we had these terms, then we can do this, but we will never get these terms. Now, Orban was just visiting with Zelensky and was trying to get a ceasefire so that they can negotiate. That's a non-starter. And then Orban was with Putin, and Putin was doubling down himself. And Putin was saying, no, there's going to be no terms. They have to immediately withdraw from all the Russian land and lay down their arms, and all just terms that are just crazy talk. Okay, there are already new formulas for peace. I am not impressed with these statements that Zelensky and his Kyiv circle supposedly realized that they should seek a truce because they don't have this or that. There is just no one to lean on. That's what we say, that Zelensky is somewhat bewildered. Biden is having problems. Trudeau lost. Rishi Sunak is leaving. Macron is leaving. Now, as I'm recording this, Macron may or may not be leaving. The election is today, Sunday, July 7th. So we'll see what happens with that. Yes, perhaps new respectable people will arrive, but problems will arise for Zelensky. First of all, this is a categorical imperative. That is a terrible use of a categorical imperative. Categorical imperative, according to Kant, he defines it as imperatives as commands or moral laws that all persons must follow regardless of their desires or extenuating circumstances. It's kind of almost a golden rule, like we want people to act like this. It's our duty to act in such a manner as we would want everyone else to act in a similar manner in similar circumstances toward other people. Okay, but he's not really paying attention to that, but okay. First of all, this categorical imperative, he's just meaning it has to be. negotiating with Ukraine in its current condition and its current political state, you always have to assume that it will deceive you. Let's full stop right there. This is what Russia does. Russia will always try to deceive, and then they will blame Ukraine for being the deceptive one. It's absolutely fascinating. They do this time and time again. They say, hey, look at what's going on. Whatever's happening in Ukraine that's bad, they'll say the Ukrainians are doing it to us, or they'll invert it. Every time they'll invert it. You always have to assume that it will deceive you. It wants to negotiate solely to deceive you. Well, I mean, if that's not writ large what the Russians have been trying to do, wow. This is a categorical imperative. Again, wrong use of the term. This is indisputable. This is from the realm of axiomatics and metaphysics. Huh? Metaphysics? You can't make peace with a wolf. That's the truest thing that's been said yet. You really can't until Russia loses the idea that this is a good idea to invade a neighbor and take over by force. You really can't. You have to defang this wolf. But they're talking about Ukraine being the wolf. Who attacked whom in the scenario? It was Russia invading Ukraine, not the other way around. You can't make peace with a wolf without skinning it first. Now, here's the headline, what comes next. Until this one gets skinned, along with everyone who stands behind him, there can be no peace. Whoa, along with everyone who stands behind him? So you have to kill off both Ukraine and what? All of the West? Is that what he's saying? It sounds a lot like he's saying that sort of thing. There can be no peace. This does not mean that with various things in mind, we won't be forced to enter these negotiations. So we will have to skin the Americans. Look, you saw that with your own eyes. It said, so we have to skin the Americans. I'll show you this again. So here, let's back up. So we will have to skin the Americans. Wow, Americans are gradually skinning themselves. So that's what he said here. So again, but remember, there's two things here. One, they do this projection, smoke and mirrors, inverse image thing. And two, when Russia does this, they're doing this for the public consumption of Russians in Russia who are watching this, and that's where they're getting their news and information from about the war in Ukraine. This does not mean that there's any grounding in reality, but it does lead the population to be on the same page with what's going on. Okay, you tell me what you thought about what you saw here. I'm not making this up. You saw it with your own eyes. That is what's being portrayed in Russian state media. We have to skin the Americans. All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes. Thank you for watching this, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.